forgiveness is like an onion. You're not going to experience ultimate forgiveness the first time. It's going to take a few passes. You kind of forgive and then you take off some of the layers. You get them down to a 7, new memories come up and you're like, "Okay, so I got more layers." This is a marathon, it's not a sprint. It's going to take a minute.
Well, hi everyone, and Happy New Year. This is Diane Gilman, formerly known as the Queen of Jeans, but now the proud host of my podcast, Too Young to Be Old. And today we have got an incredible guest, and I'm going to say she's incredible because she asks that seminal question in our lives. Who do you have in your life who thinks you think they did something unforgivable and you can never forgive them? Well, almost everybody who would raise their hand and say, "Yeah, I do," or maybe more than one. And do you know what Katharine Giovanni says? That's okay. Some people and some things just are unforgivable. I'm always used to having people say to me, "Oh, you've got to forgive them. You've got to find a way." Katharine Giovanni wrote a book called The Ultimate Path to Forgiveness, Unlocking Your Power. But here she is. And Catherine says, "You know what? Some people are just bad to the bone, and you don't have to forgive them." Catherine, welcome. What a great topic for the new year.
Thank you so much for having me on your show, Diane. I appreciate it.
A pleasure. Now, one of the reasons why I wanted you on my show, because after all, when you have your own podcast, you can really choose your subject matter. And I tend to always want to choose what I'm most passionate about. I had a very, very difficult childhood, sincerely. And I left home and didn't come back for 35 years until the day of my father's funeral. And I could never forgive him, no matter how hard I've tried, no matter how deep I've gone into all the occurrences, all the events. I've always come out of it saying, I
Yeah,
can't forgive that man for what he did to me as a child. And you
right.
are the first person who said, "That's okay.
It is okay.
It sounds like what he did was unforgivable." Okay, how did you come to this point of view? What happened in your life that made you start rating forgivability? Because I love your rating system, 1 to 10. He was like, my father was really an 11 or a 12. Um, and how did you come to writing this book? So what what built up to this?
I too was raised in a dysfunctional family filled with alcoholism and all sorts of yucky stuff. And I was a very angry teenager and an angry person. And I was just kind of walking around inside my anger. And life kind of went on until my mother died in 1990. And my self-talk was negative. I really was looking through the world through these dark glasses because it was that poor me syndrome. But I would wear it like a badge of honor. I'm a survivor. I got through this, but I
Oh,
couldn't forgive them. I forgave a few people, but then my mother died and my world kind of stopped because my mother and I were kind of friends. And we became friends the last 3 years of her life because she finally sobered up and we became friends and then she died of breast cancer. And I was kinda devastated because I only had 3 years with her, so I was kinda pissed. And my brain snapped and I thought, "I can't live like this anymore." So I started to forgive people. And I I am a concierge trainer by trade. I retired from it last year, but I used to teach people how to be a concierge and offer five-star service, workshops all over the world. And I can't teach you how to be nice to people if you're angry inside because the anger is going to bleed through your body language whether you want
yeah,
to or not.
yeah.
And back in those days in the early 2000s, you didn't put a soft topic on that to business workshops. It wasn't done. Nobody put soft topics on, but I did because I can't teach you to be nice if you're angry inside. And then I learned as the years went on, I got breast cancer and I had to get myself through that. And I started to forgive things. I started to forgive the cancer. I forgave the chemo. I forgave the cancer itself. I forgave my childhood home. I started to think, well, I can forgive more things than just people because forget the unforgivable. My parents, like yours, they were tens. They were right at the end. So I started to think about what can I forgive? So I forgave the girl in high school who stained my sweater. I forgave 1974. Why did I forgive 1974? Because it was a horrible year. My parents got divorced, and I was getting bullied every day in school, and I tried to commit suicide.
Woo.
And so I thought I forgave all the players in 74, so I decided I just was a horrible year. I'm just gonna forgive the whole darn year.
You
So I
know,
forgave 1974. And then
I
I learned
asked, oh, go ahead.
No, but then I learned that, and this was only kind of recently in the last couple of years, I thought, well, there are levels of forgiveness. So there are the levels like a one, a two, a three that you're easy to forgive, like really easy. It's the person in your office who just, you tripped or stained your sweater or spilt your coffee. Really easy people. Then you've got the fours, fives, sixes, sevens who are okay, they're playing with your head. They're kind of living in your head. You think you can forgive them. You might need to do some mental gymnastics to get yourself to forgive them, but yeah, I can kind of do it. And then you've got the eights, nines, and the tens. They're hard. They're super hard. The tens are unforgivable. These are the people who, like your parents, did something unforgivable that you just can't forgive.
Well,
You
I gotta
don't
tell
have
you,
to. You don't
my
have to.
the whole thing was sort of settled for me because honestly, I showed up on my father's funeral out of respect and to try and at least make an attempt to reconnect with my family. And my mother said to me part of the way into the funeral, and she hadn't seen me in 35 years, "I will never forgive you." And I
That's
thought,
awful.
okay, oh, well, that settles that. And I remember spending the next year and a half, she passed a year and a half later, um, driving like a maniac from New York City up to northern Maine every Friday night to try and spend a day and a half with her and mend everything. And she would sit at the opposite end of the car with her back to me, looking out the window and looking miserable. And finally, one day I just said to her, "Look, I don't want to play this game anymore. If you don't want me in your life, then let's be upfront about it. But remember, you are almost 95 years old. We have very little time left with one another. Shouldn't we try to make the most out of it?" And the answer was, "No, I'll never forgive you." And I thought, well, okay, got that one settled. So I think it was always the same thing for me that you described. As a teenager, I was an angry teenager. I probably
Yep,
had a miasma of red, angry energy around me. Now, I was lucky enough to be somebody who could use that as fuel to
right.
drive me.
Yep, I did too.
Yeah. But many people do not and instead use drugs and alcohol to calm it down, which I think just creates a billion other problems.
Well, anger is toxic. Let me give you a visual example. Let's pretend this is anger, okay?
Okay.
Somebody made you angry in your childhood. Okay. I can hold it off to the side real easy when it first starts because it's easy and I look at me, I can still conduct my life. I can still talk to people. I'm still living my life. But I'm going to hold on to this anger because whatever they did really it was horrible. So, and maybe it's a 10, but now I'm filling it with more angry. I'm on my 10 scale, I'm filling it with anything from 1 to 10, and they're all going into this little jar of anger. So it's getting heavy now. And at some point, I'm gonna have to go like this, and then at some point, it's gonna get so heavy, I have to use both my arms to hold it up. Now look at my body language. I'm not seeing my significant other, my dream spouse. I'm not seeing that new job. I'm not seeing any financial opportunities at all, because all I'm concentrating on is the anger within the glass. So to move the anger back here and eventually down, you start forgiving the easy ones, and then you move your way up to the hard ones.
You know, I read a report that said, and I read it years ago, and I doubt that it's changed much, that said that the majority, and by that I mean something really high up there, like 87 to 88% of children like you or I that come out of a highly dysfunctional, perhaps slightly violent, both towards your
Right.
mind and your physical being, um, 87% wind up being alcoholics, drug addicts,
Yep.
or attempting suicide. And I remember reading that and thinking,
Yep.
damn, that is not going to be me. So I fueled myself with all that red energy kind of
Right.
anger. And people recognized it and scared a lot of people off. But at the same time, I was lucky enough to be able to use that to propel myself. And at a certain point, when I got breast cancer, I'm 78 now, I got it when I was 72. You know what, Catherine? I had to forgive myself because
Yep. That's the big one,
the
isn't it?
surgeon said to me, Diane, you have flooded your system with hormones. You know, the thought of replacement, hormone replacement, is only supposed to be for like 3 or 4 years. You've done it for 30 years. You flooded your system with hormones. You gave yourself cancer. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to have to forgive myself. But you know what?
That's the big one,
I
forgiving
did.
yourself.
I did. I just said, I can't pile all of that onto everything else I have to deal with right
I'm so
now,
happy
dealing with
for you. That's
chemo. I got no, I that was just like, yeah, I copped to it. It's my fault. And so now what? So now let's just get down to the business of dealing with it and helping the doctors
yep.
get rid of it. Yeah, that was not the difficult one. The one with my, parents was almost insurmountable.
It took me a long time to forgive my parents, and I was one of those teens. I really did try to commit suicide in the 8th grade, and it didn't work because I called a friend of mine because in my head, I kept hearing, "Call Vivian, call Vivian, call Vivian." So I did, and she talked me out of it. Um, but after that happened, I decided to be a lighthouse and show my family how to do it right. And I thought as a teen, this works as an adult. It works really bad if you're a kid. I thought if I do everything the opposite of what my family's doing, I'll be fine. Now, that was right. But when you're a kid, it doesn't work for you because your parents don't want that. So I kind of turned into a rebel. But, as the years went on, I have tried to take the high road. When they went low, I went high, and
You know,
I was able to forgive my parents. This is how I did it, and it took years. And I'm not particularly religious, but there is a passage in the Bible when Jesus is strung up on the cross and he says, "Forgive them, Father, they know not what they do." And I can forgive somebody if they're in the 2nd grade and they don't know calculus. They haven't been taught it yet. I can forgive that. And I realized that my parents did the best they could with the tools they had at the time. Was it good enough? Absolutely not. But they did the best they could. And at the end of the day, that's how I got to forgive my parents. And
and you know,
they went from 10s. That's how I got them from a 10 down to like a 7. And once they got to a 7, then, forgiveness is like an onion. You're not going to experience ultimate forgiveness the first time. It's going to take a few passes. You kind of forgive and then you take off some of the layers. You get them down to a 7, new memories come up and you're like, "Okay, so I got more layers." This is a marathon, it's not a sprint. It's going to take a minute.
so how did you form your forgiveness journey? Because I know that for me, as a kid, there was none of this lingo roaming around in the ethers. Forgiveness, unforgiveness. I mean, I think that the attitude of my entire family was, you're a child, you are the property of adults, and
Yeah.
adults can do whatever the adults decide to do, no matter how insane it is, that's the right thing to do because they're adults. And I, like you, became the rebel in the family, the wild child. And all I was really trying to do
Yay,
was
sister. That's me.
get get at the freedom I wanted to
Right?
be a fashion designer and live in New York and, be a success and take care of myself. But because it was not the vision of the adults, it was considered terrible choices. So, forgiving the unforgivable and the act of forgiveness itself.
Right.
Let's talk about that. How do you forgive
How do I do it?
in,
Okay.
yeah, your family and the
Um,
alcoholism and everything that went along with it? And
well, you don't have to burn incense. You don't need crystals. You don't have to dance around on one leg you don't have to dance around on one leg and hop around your bedroom. It's
and have
not
a
it
shaman come in
nope,
and
you don't need a
purify the
shaman.
house,
It
right?
is not Alcoholics Anonymous. You don't have to reach out to these people. There's a lot of listeners out there that are breathing a sigh of relief right now as I just said that. You don't. This forgiveness is selfish, it's personal. You don't even have to tell the person you're doing it. And what I did is, and I only want you to do 10 people at a time, because if you do more than 10 people, you might make yourself sick because the anger has to leave your body. And it's going to leave your body. I usually do it at night before I go to bed. And when I first did it, must have forgiven 30, 40 people. I just sat there and forgave. And I spent the next 2 days in bed with, to put it delicately, the stomach flu, shall we say. And everybody thought I didn't. My body had to get rid of the anger. And it was the only way it knew how to do it.
Wow, it's
So
like detoxing,
yeah, it's
really.
very toxic.
Yeah.
So when I first did forgiveness, the first person I forgave was a childhood friend of mine. And I couldn't even remember why that I needed what happened to us. So I sat in my bed and I said, I forgive you. And I had a little mantra that I say that I have in the book, and it's real easy. And once I forgave the person, I forgot about it. I hadn't spoken to this person in 30 years. 2 hours later, this is a true story. 2 hours later, she calls me up on the phone, and I was shocked out of my mind, and because I'm a very curious little bear, I said, I love the fact that you're calling me, but why on this particular day did you decide to call me?" She said it was the strangest thing. A figurine you gave me way back in high school that I had on a shelf flew into the middle of my room about 2 hours ago, and I figured I should call you. That's exactly
Wow.
that's what I was saying, I forgive her. So if the energy can make
Yeah.
that happen, we were 700 miles apart for a level 1 person. Imagine what it can do when you get up into the higher numbers. Forgiveness is going to allow money to flow into your life. It's going to give you your health back. It's going to allow you to put down the glass so you can see things again. So 10 at a time, and in the book, I have some worksheets in there, and you write down everybody you can think of. And I want you to write down people, places, or things. I want you to write down your childhood home. I want you to write down cancer and chemo and the doctors. I want you to forgive yourself. And I want you to forgive the energy around all these things. That's the secret sauce. The reason people don't stay forgiveness because I have so many people, Diane, that say, "Oh, well, Catherine, I have forgiven them." Yeah, you did. But did you forgive the energy around them? No, you probably didn't. So the mantra is, I forgive you. I forgive the energy around you. I forgive me. I forgive the energy around me. And all is well with the world. I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember it exactly. But that's the secret sauce is you're forgiving the energy. And that's when you can go on Facebook or social media and see that person's name and it doesn't zing your brain. That's when you know you've reached forgiveness. If you don't if it still zings your brain, well, you're gonna have to make another pass. So wait a second and wait like 24 hours and do it again. Eventually, you'll get these people down to a level like a 1, 2, or 3 where you can forgive them. But that's
You
the
know,
secret sauce. It's the energy.
I think that I came to a point in my life, especially after breast cancer. I don't know
Yeah,
about you, but I went into that dark tunnel as
I
one
did too.
person and I came out as another.
Breast
And
cancer was the
somebody,
best thing that ever happened to me, and people would
yeah,
get very strange when I say that, and it's like, "No, you don't understand. When you have dinner with the Grim Reaper and you don't go home with the guy, it changes you." And you realize aging doesn't bother you anymore, and you realize you're here for a reason. There's a reason why I
purpose.
didn't die.
Yeah,
I had stage 3, and I could
me
have
too.
died, but I didn't. And I'm still here, and I figure you and I are still here for a reason. We're here for a reason.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
these things, little things don't bother me anymore.
But I wanted to create an aura around me. And I'm not going to use the word forgiveness because that didn't come to mind, but talking to you, it really was. I wanted to create an aura where I was all about kindness and acceptance and helping others, and truly that became my legacy and my purpose, and that is completely intertwined with forgiveness. So I have
It's a
ex
feeling.
business.
Forgiveness is a feeling. People say the words "I forgive you." Sure, but I tell people to put your hand in your heart because it's the feeling that's really the power there. So you were forgiving people, but you were doing it through feeling, which is exactly right. It's perfect.
But at a certain point I thought to myself that my life was no longer as satisfying as it once been, and you know that when you come out of that tunnel of breast cancer or whatever life
Right.
affirming disease you are able to deal with, that you turn around and say to yourself, "Is this all there is?"
Yeah, you
And
do.
you don't want your life filled with toxic anger
No, you don't.
anymore. And forgiveness is a huge part of it. And it's very interesting to me because I walked away from my business and I had purpose. And I said, I will definitely be doing something else, but it's going to be something more philanthropic, something with less anger, less tension, less toxicity
Yep.
attached to it, and that has a much purer and higher purpose. And oh my God, I feel so free.
Yep.
Wow.
Because you tossed all the anger and now you feel physically lighter. People have said to me, "Why do I feel lighter?" They can feel it coming off their shoulders because you are. That's the anger coming off.
And anger to me, there was so much anger in the business that I had when I was diagnosed that I honestly blamed some of the people in that
Yeah.
business with aiding and abetting
Yeah.
my getting the cancer. And I felt afterwards, you go through that whole shock of, oh my God, stage 3 cancer, and what am I going to do? And I'm terrified of
Yep.
chemo and da da da. You go through it all. And when I came out the other end, certain people in the business I could forgive for multiple reasons because they were actually really amazing human beings that just couldn't contain their greed or always felt they had to step on someone to get one rung up the ladder. And I think that part of forgiveness is understanding and accepting whoever you're angry at,
Right.
that person's weaknesses, not making excuses for them, just saying, okay, someone born into abject poverty who's now multi millionaire. He didn't get there by being a nice guy, but he is an incredible human being. And I was one of the rungs on the ladder for him. And so, the forgiveness is there balanced by who that person is and
Right.
what they went through. And then some people, Catherine, is just screw it. They are bad to the bone through and through, and they're never going to realize their faults or what they're doing.
They're
And
nines and tens, and you just kind of
or you
save them
just
for
got to get
last.
away from it. You
Yeah,
just have to get away from it. And if
just
you're
walk
lucky,
away.
like me, you will get into a situation where you're the boss again. And
Yeah,
the boss, and I would say this, that forgiveness and the whole trail of forgiveness is choosing your journey path
that's
in
right.
life. And at any point in your life, you can change that path or carve out a new road.
Yeah,
But, now my biggest anger is with, sometimes I get really frustrated being 78. I can't walk as fast as I once could. I can't jog. I can't do this. I can't do that. I drop things a little more often and I get very angry at myself. And then I say, okay, Diane, be realistic. You can't be angry at life for giving you all these beautiful moments. You just got to learn to deal with it. So, what would you say is the one huge idea in your book for repurposing your life away from internal anger and rage and going for something far more life-giving and ethereal and actually soul satisfying? What would be your big idea in the book?
I think to understand anger. What happens when we're angry? We think when we get angry, we think it goes out into the world and it dissipates and goes up to the clouds. We all think that and it
But
leaves.
it doesn't.
It does not. It hangs around in your energy
And
field
hurts a
and
lot of people around you,
and the
possibly.
more anger, and Einstein said, energy is neither created nor destroyed, it just changes forms. So you've got all this anger energy all around yourself. Or you can call it anything you like. So to first understand that you are literally a walking snowball of anger and to be able to forgive that energy so it allow it to dissipate, to be able to forgive people, to be able to forgive things like 1974. And my friend of mine forgave a little red wagon. She just came, she was writing her list and she just randomly wrote down little red wagon. She had no idea why she wrote it down. She had no idea what the red wagon did, but obviously it was from her childhood and she needed to forgive the darn thing. So she did, you know, and it's a feeling. And the crazy thing is the more people you forgive, the better your life is going to get. My business started to increase, the money started to increase, the opportunities started to increase, my health came back. I wasn't getting the flu and sick and every Tom, Dick, and Harry germ that walked down. So forgiveness is freeing. But the biggest message in the book is probably if they are at number 10 and they are unforgivable, you don't have to forgive them. You can forgive yourself. You can forgive the energy. You can forgive the situation. You can forgive the town, the building, the chair, wherever you are. But the actual person, if they're a 10, you don't have to forgive them.
Well,
Someday down the road, can you circle back like I did and forgive your parents? Yes, some
yeah.
people can. But do you have to? No, you do not.
When I was a teenager, late teenager, I think I was about 18 and a half, 19. And the conflicts between my mother and father and they were sort of united uh, at not approving of anything I did. And I desperately wanted to, although I didn't believe I could, but I wanted to try and save some semblance of family. So I went to a psychologist and I kind of explained my situation. And he said, well, let's call your parents and try and get them in for group counseling. And I thought, oh, yeah, good luck on that one. And I was kind of terrified to do it. But he said, no, no, no. So I call my home. I get my father on the phone. And I said, I just want you to talk to this doctor for a minute. And the psychologist said, da da da. And Diane would like to try and get to the roots of all of your dissatisfactions. My father just said, basically, "Go F yourself. We have never done anything wrong in our entire lives, and we're certainly not coming in for this, and we're not crazy," and hung up the phone. And I mean, that to me just sort of summed it up. And the psychologist turned around to me and said, "I have one piece of advice for you. Run away from these people as
Yeah.
fast as you can." And so you, Katharine Giovanni, and that psychologist are the only two people in my life who said, "You know what? Some situations are
Yep.
simply not copable.
No, they're not.
Let
They're too
them
dark.
go."
Let them go. Walk away. Forgive yourself, forgive the energy, and then walk away.
How do you do that when you're from a family that constantly presses you to come back into the family again, but you know that getting back into the family is so toxic and unproductive for you? What is your advice to anybody out there that carries around a lot of guilt for not being closer to their parents, or a lot of guilt for what they feel they should have made more of an effort? Just as a closing remark, what would you say?
I'd say it's okay. It's okay. You can be yourself. You can be free, and it's okay. You forgive who you can. Write your list of 1 to 10. Start with the ones and understand that certain situations are toxic. Now, if you live with this person, you might have to forgive them every day. Or, if you
Or
can't,
not live with them
or
anymore.
if or my
How's that?
Diana and I are both telling you you might want to consider leaving, but if you're stuck and you can't leave, then forgive them here every day, and at the very least, you're going to get better, you're going to get happier, and that might irritate the heck out of them, which will be a little
Yeah,
side entertainment for you, because the
yeah.
happier you get, the more
Oh,
irritated they're going to get. So, little entertainment for you, because then you'll know it's working. But sometimes it's like cancer. It's a minute by minute choice to stay positive when you're sick.
yeah.
It's not a day to day. Sometimes I had to take it second by second to keep myself positive and keep myself going forward. And forgiveness and anger is the same way. Sometimes you just have to take it in sound bites. You have to take it in little pieces. Don't take the whole chunk. Don't go right to the number 10s. You'll fail. Start with the easy ones and take things in chunks.
The interesting thing is when, and this is, I'm just kind of rounding up to the end of the podcast, but when you and I had our introductory call and you said I was a lighthouse and had a
You
positive
are.
light to shine out there into the universe. And I thank you so much for that. That really meant a lot to me. But I remember as a youth, everybody being very scared of me because I was always so angry. And somebody who was a psychic once described me as this big red ball of fire. And if you got too close, you got singed or burnt. And then all these years later, to have someone describe me as a lighthouse with a
Yeah.
pure light that could help a lot of people tells you that somehow I have, in my own way, mastered
You
the
have.
art of forgiveness. And so, everybody, I want to say again, Katharine Giovanni, this is an incredible bit of subject matter. Her book, The Ultimate Path to Forgiveness, Unlocking Your Power, it's the real deal. Catherine, thank you so much for being on Too Young to Be Old.
It's my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to Too Young to Be Old podcast. The episode may be over, but the fun doesn't have to stop here. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at The Diane Gilman, or visit our website, thedianegilman.com. If you like the show, leave us a rating or a review and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And until then, don't forget, age is just a number. Together, we'll prove that we are all too young to be old.